Hello there, and welcome to Star Wars Music Minute, where we celebrate the music and sound of Star Wars 5 cinematic minutes at a time. I'm Chrysanthi Tan, and today's episode is based on minutes 86 through 90 of Star Wars Episode 8, The Last Jedi. In this set of minutes, DJ takes the Haitian smelt medallion from Rose. Finn and DJ have a conversation about good guys and bad guys. Poe has an outburst after finding out that Holdo is fueling up the transports. Rey flies her escape pod straight to Kylo Ren in the Supremacy hangar, and DJ starts getting to work with Finn and Rose. Lots happening, and luckily, guest is here. Wow, a guest is here. Luckily, Blythe is here. Blythe guest is here with me to talk about the music and sound and talk about what we noticed here. Hello, Blythe. Wasn't that a great introduction?
That was amazing. I think I'm going to change my name to Blythe Guest now. I think I'm going to just be Blythe Guest, and everyone can wonder if I'm related to Christopher Guest. It'll be great.
That would be that. Yeah, I wouldn't mind that. Everyone asks me if I'm related to Amy Tan.
I mean, that's not bad.
No, it's not bad.
Not terrible. I mostly just get for some reason later in life, I started getting the Farmigas, like the Farmiga sisters. Vera and Thaisa, and I'm like, I don't look anything like them, but okay, I'll take it.
See, from you, I get Sabine vibes.
Yeah, that's
from Rebels.
That is the character where I was like, I want to be a Jedi, and then Star Wars was like, here's a Mandalorian who's exactly like you, and I was like, well, I have many conflicted feelings about this because I've never wanted to be a Mandalorian, but I am Sabine. Never liked the Mandalorians, never particularly cared about them, and then they were like, here's Sabine Wren, and I was like, okay, I'm listening, I'm interested. I'll hear you out on this.
And you have the hair.
The hair changes as much as hers does. It's bad.
That is very impressive. That's really cool. So how do you feel about these minutes? How do you feel about coming on the show?
I feel great. I mean, I love The Last Jedi. I'm a big fan, so being asked to do any section of the movie, I was going to be happy to talk about, especially understanding where a lot of the influences for Rian Johnson were coming from. Like, I kind of broke it down. Like, there's a lot of classic filmmaking techniques and things he uses, and John Williams is such a classic composer that I feel like Rian Johnson's filmmaking and John Williams composing really meld well together. Especially in these scenes, like the way it's paced, the way it's edited, the way it's acted, like the music is just amplifying the scene and making it even more interesting. But there's already some really great acting. There's already great comedic beats. Like with BB-8, there's already great stuff happening, and it's really nice to see someone who's such a reverent filmmaker with such an amazing composer.
Yeah. So the comedic beats, what were the comedic beats for you? And how do you feel like the music worked with them, or the sound design?
I mean, for me, the main comedic beat that I can think of off the top of my head is when Finn is kind of realizing, why are you stealing from your ship? And he's like, wait a second. And BB-8's like, this isn't his ship. He stole it. And DJ translates that because Finn hasn't quite learned to understand BB-8 yet. And then BB-8's offended that he gets roped into having stolen the ship, even though we know BB-8 helped. Totally. We know BB-8, you're not so innocent. That moment is just really cute and fast and fun. That scene, though, the music is very quiet and kind of underplayed. Mm-hmm. It's very much letting the scene do the work, but there to keep the energy up. Yeah. I don't that's not a super pointed music scene, but there's a lot of sound effects and other things happening as DJ is rifling through things. And then BB-8 obviously requires a lot of sound mixing and sound editing to make him sound right and feel right. So there's a lot of stuff happening.
I feel like the music in general is more on the subdued side in this whole set of minutes. It's more like little well, there are motifs that pop up, but it's really underscore, in the description, there's so much happening in these minutes, so the music kind of transitions things quickly. And I think usually when the music really stops and has a standout moment, that's usually when we are going to stick around with the character for a while, like on Octo or something. Like that's when you get like the full on like music soundtrack thing on the soundtrack. But here is a lot of transitions. Um, Sort of like the BB-8 moment that you mentioned. Also later on when Rey is getting into the escape pod and she
Mhm.
says she tells Chewie to like tell Finn, and then Chewie jumps in with a something that we don't understand, and conveniently she's like, "Yeah, tell him that." I guess that's the second time in these set of minutes that we have either a droid or a character that we don't understand filling in the gaps of what the characters aren't saying and sort of leaving it up to us to figure out what they said, which is interesting.
I love like Star Wars does that a lot, and I kind of love it because none of us ever know what BB-8 or R2D2 are really saying. With Rebels, you can kind of tell. There is a point at which I realized Dave Filoni just recorded lines and they're sound edited to make Chopper sound the way he does. So if you listen closely, Chopper is technically saying words.
Mm.
Um, but there is this kind of neat little thing in Star Wars where they really use sound like beeps or rars or whatever, and we know the intent.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we always know if R2D2 or BB-8 is sassing somebody because of the way the characters react, and I've always thought that was really cool, especially for like A New Hope, where C3PO and R2D2 are like the only characters for like a good, I think it's like 45 minutes. And you know what R2 is saying based on C3PO's reactions to R2. But
Right.
we don't know what's being said, but we feel it. We know the intention of what's going on, and it's kind of incredible. That's a really hard thing to pull off in a movie, especially through writing and dialogue. Like you have to make sure that whatever the character is saying makes sense back. Like they kind of have to repeat something, or like it's not easy to do, and Star Wars has always done it really well.
But also we have to trust the character that's interpreting
Mhm.
the thing that we don't understand. And I think, yeah, that's overall like a filmmaking device or something that I think is really effective. Obviously it's shorthand, and obviously if we really strip down any of the dialogue in a movie and put it in the real world, the dialogue cuts to the chase more than normal dialogue in real life would. But that's because we're watching a movie, and there are certain narrative shorthands like that. And I think um, with BB-8, like I don't know, I just think the sound of the droids like is so instrumental in that, like you said.
Mhm.
With Chewie, I remember thinking like, oh, that's convenient because everyone was wondering about Finn and Rey's relationship and what that might be. So convenient that no one had to, that we didn't get to find out exactly.
Yeah, that is some that every time I hear that scene, I'm like, because to me they were always just friends. I've always seen them as like best friends, but I also have a very strong stance on the idea that I want Rey to have no romance because I would really like to see a female lead who doesn't have a romance.
Mm-hmm.
I Everyone's like, well, why, it's a whole thing, but I would just like to have her be like a Luke and it not be focused on romance. Maybe she has a crush down the line or whatever, but like her main focus is that she is the hero of the story, not that she's like who she will or won't date. At least to me. So I've always
Yeah,
been a big fan
I
of
agree with
like
that.
I've always been like they're just best friends. And like Finn obviously they have like a connection, but that's now we know the force and also they're two people who've never really had friends before.
Yeah.
So when they first get along, they're like, "Oh my god, friend, person, human contact that I haven't ever experienced." So they're kind of course, in the first movie, they're like, "Whoa, this is new. This is exciting. This is something I haven't done before."
Yeah, I think especially the part where Chewie fills in the gap
Mhm.
is that felt to me like um Ryan Johnson leaving space for
Mhm.
the next movie to develop.
Yeah.
For it, yeah, it was just him not finishing his sentence. And I think there are actually a lot of those points in The Last Jedi, but maybe it'll come up later in discussion. But I think a lot of threads I mean, a few threads at least, were left open on purpose. Um,
There's one thread that I don't think was left open that I think some people would disagree with me on, and it's
Oh,
a
I'm
scene that
curious.
comes after this. I
Okay.
personally think the Kylo Ren thread is pretty done and closed after this movie. It's pretty
Oh,
clear
okay,
like
okay.
where like I think it's clear where he stands and I think it's clear where she stands. And I we won't get into Rise, but like I do think that thread is pretty like okay, this is setting up the next movie. This is the thread we have like we did it. This is what's happening and it was up to the next movie to follow on that thread in a way, in like a very specific way. Whereas like with Finn, I think he was trying to also be respectful because of the fact there were so many fans who did ship them, did want them together. And I think it was like, well, we'll just leave that to interpretation because if you want to see it, you should be allowed to see it.
Hmm.
And I think Ryan Johnson can respect that as a filmmaker of like the fans like these characters and have their interpretation of their characters. So like we can let them have that. If you want to think they're friends, you can think they're friends with this Chewie bit. If you want to think they're in love, you can think they're in love. Like this is kind of that moment where it's like it's up to you. Rey's relationship status doesn't really matter to the story, but here's like a little bit of a, if you want it, it's there. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. Um, Finn, Finn's a character that I can't pinpoint. Like, I can't off the top of my head think what music Finn has. Can you?
No, I can't. I can hear Rey's theme. Like I know Rey's theme. I know Ezra's theme in like Rebels. Like I can usually pick out the themes. Finn is one. Finn and Poe are two where I don't think I could tell you like what their music is.
Yeah. I think it's interesting and a little bit indicative of intent when some characters have really obvious themes and others don't. And, you know, Ray's significance is really um like she has so much thematic material. She has a few different motifs,
Mhm.
that pop up in different places. And I think it's definitely obvious. She's obviously the main character, but the themes really focus on her and not so much on the others. And so that's just a very interesting thing. And I think if Finn were meant to have, put it this way, Rose also has a lot of music in this movie,
Mhm.
um, but it doesn't show up in episode 9. But the fact that there was so much music written makes me wonder. Makes me wonder if she was meant to be something more. So,
I have I'm like trying not to get into the Rise
yeah,
of Skywalker opinions because I have a lot of friends who do like it, and I'm like, it's fine, you're allowed to like it. I didn't. um,
fair enough. So,
but yeah, I would agree. Rose has a lot of like Rose has a theme. Rey has a theme.
yeah,
I would have to like really go and look and see if Finn and Poe had one actually composed or not because I don't think they do.
Poe
I
has
don't think
one,
they
but
have.
it's one that I barely recognize. But what does have a lot of themes is like the resistance. And
Oh,
so those wires get crossed a little bit because characters that are affiliated with the resistance, like you will hear resistance themes sort of with them. So there is a little bit of ambiguity. And in this set of 5 minutes, we get a lot of resistance, like small resistance motifs and ones like tension motifs and a few other ones that always pop up when the resistance is in trouble, which the resistance is in trouble here. So we do get those. Um chronologically in these minutes. So first DJ is taking the medallion from Rose.
mhm.
Um Finn is really upset about it. He's indignant and the conversation about the good guys and the bad guys, uh I really I really like that conversation. I think it's an important conversation to have. Um what do you think about it?
I love that. Like I love that bit with DJ and Finn. I like the idea of the yeah, because Finn has such a black and white mentality right now.
Mhm.
They're like to him, he just got out of seeing the bad guys and in action. and he was on the ground level of that. He's left that, and now he's like, oh, these are the good guys.
Yeah.
And it's really easy to fall into that kind of train of thought, especially after you've seen kind of the horror after like he quits because he sees his kind of friends and brothers and siblings in ways like kill people, and he's not okay with
Yeah.
that.
Hmm.
But he hasn't understood that there's a lot more nuance to it. And I really appreciate The Last Jedi bringing that kind of world building in, because it's something that you see in Clone Wars, it's something that you see in Rebels. It's not something you see a ton in the movies. They start on it with the prequels. So it was kind of nice for them to really delve into the fact that if you're going to be fighting for something, you have to fight for what you believe in. And if you believe that the rebels are the right thing and the good thing, and they are comparatively,
Yes.
um, you have to fight for that regardless. And there are going to be people who mess it up. There are people who are going to, make deals on and play both sides, like DJ. But at the end of the day, like if you believe in the rebellion and you believe in the resistance, do it. It doesn't matter what DJ says. If you believe in that, like do your thing. And I feel like that's a really important moment for Finn, because it's very easy to be DJ. It's not as easy to be like a resistance hero. It's a lot easier to fall into that, well, why should I care? And Rose is very much like, no, we care because we fight for the things we love. We fight for the things we want to see in the world. We fight for a better world or a universe or galaxy. And I think that's so beautiful and important for Finn to learn. And it's something he didn't really get to learn in The Force Awakens. So I love seeing that journey in The Last Jedi. I remember when I first saw it thinking, like, I don't know how I feel about Canto Bight, but the more I watch the movie, I'm like, this is the central theme. Like,
Mm.
this is the stuff Ryan Johnson wants to talk about. The Rey stuff is really great. Rey is the main character, but like you can tell with the care and detail he puts into that Canto Bight stuff and the way Finn's arc. I was like, this is the story Ryan is telling. He wants
Interesting.
us to think about the world and how we glamorize and idolize kind of this very rich and lavish world, but then you kind of realize that they're just hiding in a different way and they're doing kind of not so great things, and like it's just a nice bit of commentary that I really like. I love this movie.
I can tell. So do I. Well, when the thing DJ, I feel like is very he's very measured in his response in this scene. So like he pulls up the hologram because he's like, let's see the stats. Let's see who had the ship before us. So he, pulls up
Yeah.
the hologram and we see, and he's like, oh, it looks like they're arms dealers. They sold to both sides basically.
Yep.
And just a moment of appreciation for whenever there's a hologram scene. I love bleeps and bloops. I
Same. Oh
love
my god.
those. And a detail that I noticed, but I didn't notice until like I had watched the scene a bunch of times because it seemed so realistic. And now I'm wondering how this was filmed and, how much of the hologram they were seeing, probably none when they were filming it. DJ like moves out of the way when the hologram pops up, sort of like, and I'm just so curious how that was directed. If they were like, I don't know, the hologram's gonna pop. Like I imagine the hologram's gonna pop up, but it's your head's gonna be a little bit in the way. So as soon as it pops up, like make sure that you dodge it.
There's a good I don't know this for sure. There's a good chance that Ryan or the second unit or whoever was directing that particular portion was off to the side timing for when the hologram would pop up,
Oh,
so
okay.
that as they're going, it'll be like, okay, you were here, but we're gonna time for you to move
Oh, okay.
in
So
the
they
way of
would
the
have had
effect.
to. So they would have had to like make the hologram in advance. Like they would have already designed that.
They might not have designed the actual hologram, but they'd have an idea of where it's going to exist in the space.
Mm.
When you're directing big CG projects like that, even if you don't have like the finalized thing, which technically in filmmaking nothing is ever final. You don't label things final because it's always changing. You would know enough about where it's going to be, how it's going to feel in the space, how it's going to look. You'd have at least some kind of pre-rendered ish vision. Um, I don't know if they were using this technology yet, but a lot of Star Wars, like there are times where you can have like especially with the volume and stuff, where you can kind of see on a screen like a pre-rendered visual of what's supposed to be in places.
Did you say with the ball human stuff?
Yeah, it can be like that. Or the
Wait.
volume, sorry. The set they use for the Mandalorian. They have a giant screen that they use. And they can digitally place things into that screen as they need to. So it's
Oh.
like a living set basically. But
So
for
the
Last
actors can be
Jedi,
looking at like a big computer screen, like basically like a big, not the computer screen, but like a big.
so for Mandalorian, the volume wasn't used for Last Jedi, but the way it's used for
So it's called a
Mandalorian is
volume?
yeah, that's the
Okay.
name of it.
Okay.
It's a
Obviously,
giant
you work on films.
this stuff is very important to me. So the way it's set up is basically a giant kind of screen that goes around in like a 180 circle, like half circle, and it is a set. It has Tatooine or oh god, some like it can have literally whatever planet he's on behind him, and they use physical props as needed. So like they have a Razor Crest that he can get in and out of, but they don't ever have to go really shoot on location as much because they can just set deck and then fill the screen in with whatever the backdrop is instead of using a green screen. And so it helps because it makes the lighting slightly more realistic on the actors. So like when you're playing with a really reflective suit like Mando's, Tatooine is reflecting from the screen onto his suit, so you don't have to worry about it being like, okay, now I got to digitally put this here and make that reflection look like it's supposed to. Like you don't have to do that because it's happening in real time.
Do you think they did that on The Last Jedi at all?
The technology wasn't super refined by then. They started really using it with the Mandalorian. So Last Jedi is probably a lot of green screen and sets. It's a combo of the practical set and the green screen, which is usually more common. And there's a lot of on location shooting for certain types of shots.
For sure.
I don't know I don't know specifically for this scene. I can't say like
Okay.
specifically how Ryan would have done this scene, but as someone who's directed things, I know that like you map out where things are going to be, where things are going to pop up so that you know how it's going to affect the actors. So like if you have a hologram coming up, you have like a green mark. And you're like, okay, that's going to be there. And there's probably a bit of a green screen there for that to pop up. And Benicio del Toro will just know to like they'll probably time, okay, you need to move. Or he did it instinctually because he realized he was blocking the effect they told him not to block.
That's really funny.
Like there's a few ways that could have happened, but if they were intending him to move, they would have timed him out as to when the hologram is going to pop up more than likely so that he would know, all right, in 3 seconds, I have to move. So I can be here for this time, and in 3 seconds, that's going to pop up and I got to be out of the way.
It's
like
it's wild.
Filmmaking is wild.
It's wild how many like small choices. I don't know how many things sometimes are just an actor improvising with no planning, and sometimes it's like this detailed set, this like perfectly timed, detailed thing that went into the making of a tiny moment. I love it.
And it entirely depends on the director and the actor, and like if you were working with a Kubrick doesn't really allow room for the actors to just do things. Kubrick wanted everything to be perfect and wanted to do it his way. By what I've heard of Rian Johnson, he's a little bit more of a like, if you come up with something and have it yourself, like we can use that kind of director because he wants the things to feel believable, to feel real. And if you let your actors kind of be themselves, you'll get more believable, more real performances. I actually read a really great thing on the throne room scene and why it's filmed the way it's filmed. So whenever you get there,
do people have sound effects that they get to hear while they're doing stuff? Because sound design is like such a, it strikes me as such a post thing to do. At least a lot of it, but also the sound design of a scene, like things sound so different in real life than they do when you're watching a movie and everything's punched up. So I just wonder how hard it is for actors to, I don't know, do certain movements and press certain buttons without, like, I guess the haptic feedback and like the sound feedback, you know, like pressing a screen, things like pressing a screen and pressing a button and things like that.
It depends. I mean, if it's like a real prop, you usually get that tactile nature to begin with. So if there's like a real button you're pressing, even if it's not making the noise, you can imagine kind of what's going on there. It's a little harder if it's not, if it's like a green block you're holding, then you have to really put your imagination into it.
Like I
Um,
know when Adam Driver was practicing with lightsaber stuff, he would like make the sound. He would
yeah,
make the sound himself, and
you
then I
don't
think
hear
his
that. That is
trainer,
not on set.
yeah, and then he was told that he should probably stop doing that because then he's gonna do that in scene, and it's gonna look really funny if he's making his own lightsaber sound.
Ewan McGregor, you did do that, and they had to tell him to stop because it was ruining the audio.
Oh, that's
You
funny.
have to. So depending on what you need, like I worked on a short film recently where the director did have a temp track for one of the actors to listen to because it was so dependent on the timing of the track. So he had it like a temporary version made so that the actor could hear it as he was doing the action, but he didn't have to speak, and there was no like audio recording, so it didn't matter because so we could play it live and he could do the thing. Um, it entirely just depends on what you want. A
Yeah.
lot of a lot of the time you won't be hearing sounds, but sometimes directors are like, "You're not speaking right now. Let's just like play the music or whatever, so you can have a feel for what the scene will be, feel for how it will go." Like when you do music videos, you tend to not record with sound,
Yeah.
so they can lip sync and like sing along and do whatever they need to do to get the most realistic looking singing for the video because they're gonna overlay with the proper
Yeah, for
song.
sure, for sure. Um, so after the hologram DJ thing, by the way, if you have anything to fill in as I'm like moving along chronologically, feel free with, you know, if you notice anything in the sound that I'm missing, that I'm leaving out, because I'm just paying attention to the things that I liked the best or that I noticed. Um, we get the interstitial shot of the cannon fire blowing a small resistance ship to smithereens. And here we get like a hint of the tension motif, which it's called the tension motif just because, I mean, I follow. Do you know? Are you familiar with Frank Lehman's work?
Not off the top of my head.
So Frank Lehman is just one of the many people who, you know, does Star Wars music analysis, and he has this thematic catalog, and he just names, like, I just like his naming conventions, and I like the way that he organizes them. So I'm arbitrarily, you know, it's not like John Williams doesn't call this the tension motif, but I'm just following someone else's naming conventions. And so internally, have been using Frank Lehman's naming. So this is the tension motif, which is like when the resistance is in trouble. Is just stuff like that. There's a few different tension motifs. Well, that's one, and also in just in various rhythms, and yeah, it pops up several times. Um, then we get another space shot of the Radis, which is a wild looking ship.
Yeah.
Absolutely wild. We get another tension motif moment. And Poe's footsteps as he is coming down the corridor are so loud. Like those booming footsteps are just like Poe's on a rampage, is
Mhm.
what that sounds like to me. And then when we get the inside of the Radis with the confrontation, I just marvel at the sound of the Radis. And by that I mean like the ambient sound of being on the Radis. All that you hear inside, it's like muffled because you're inside, but you still hear all the stuff blowing up outside of
Mhm.
the ship. And it's like this ominous, like, it's this ominous feeling of you're in a, you know, relatively safe space. I mean, you're not safe at all, but at least you're on the inside of something. But you hear all of the ways the outside is going to come to you at some point, and it's just a
Yep.
matter of time. And that combined with like Poe's storming and, you know, starts smashing chairs and whatever starts, he has his little outburst. That it like the sounds are not friendly in this scene, I guess is what I'm saying. And I went back and compared this scene to the Many Bothans Died briefing in the Return of the Jedi to compare the sound of like what it's like being on the ships. And it's definitely a lot noisier in The Last Jedi. I mean, maybe in all of the sequels, but just compared to the old films. Compared to this film, when I go back and watch the original trilogy, like when they're on the ship having briefings, it sounds like more like they're in a boardroom in a building because a lot quieter. There's a lot less ambient noise.
I actually really like the use of ambient noise on the ship, especially for this. Like I like it's that feeling of we know that any second now we are going to be a part of that, and it's just going to get worse and worse and worse. And I like that use because I imagine that being on a ship, I guess maybe you're breaking some. There's probably some physics rules being broken to be able to hear all that, but like I imagine if you're that close, you'd hear it. It wouldn't be like dead silent inside. I could be wrong because the way sound travels and the lack of oxygen and air in space. So someone could come after me of like, your science is wrong. But I like that little bit of breaking of reality to create that tension, to create that like fear that like, oh God, because the pacing in the scene keeps ramping up and like things are about to get real. And I love the way
Yeah.
they do that, especially with the little the tension motifs, the use of when it gets loud. It's like now it's really loud for a second, and now it's quiet. They're talking, but it's like you can feel the like unease.
Yeah, in the way that they deliver their lines too. Like you're not allowed to hear. It is also like so much is conveyed in so few lines
Mm-hmm.
when Poe is storming in,
Mm-hmm.
and then after, oh my gosh, the sound of the transports fueling up is so cool. I love that sound. It's like beep 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 beep.
I love beeps and I love like robotic noises in science fiction. Like I
And I was,
love them.
me too. And with that one, I think like that sound in particular, I think I am really drawn to because the way that it sounds kind of parallel, like works with what it is actually doing. Like I'm trying to think, like why does that sound convince? Like why Poe immediately recognized that sound as the fueling up, and the beeps ascend like in pitch or in frequency. Beep 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 beep. It's a very like it's a nice sonic representation of like that little battery uh, charge symbol that we see when things are charging, and it's like starts with 1 bar and then it's like 2. Yeah, I just really like how I just think it's a beautiful sound design choice.
It's almost like trickling of water or trickling of actual gasoline. Like it
Oh yeah,
starts like
yeah.
a little slow, a little slow, a little slow, and then it's like, whoop, it's full.
But
It's just
also
like it
as
has
it
that like trickling nature.
well, and also as you add more drops, the pitch will rise. The pitch rises. Yeah, that's a good point. Doop, doo, 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 doo. So good.
Yeah,
It's a great one.
it's so
I
good.
like it so much. I want to hear more charging noises now. That's gonna be my thing that I try to notice everywhere. Charging noises.
I want my phone to sound like that when it's charging, and it doesn't.
But only for like 5 seconds.
Yeah,
Not for the whole
not the
hour.
whole time.
No,
No, God,
not the
no.
whole time.
No, I
just
want it to be
just
like,
exactly when I want it. Yeah, just
yeah,
happen. Yeah.
at like the end of the charging cycle, it makes
Ooh.
this sound. It does not do it the whole time.
Maybe right when you plug it in and then when it's done.
Yep.
So you know that it is plugged in. You don't have to like wait to be like, is it? Because was the connection made? Yeah, I like
Yeah.
that.
Do I have to redo it?
So that sound. What else was I going to say? Oh yeah, after Get This Man Off My Bridge, we get a strident. I'll play it, but it's how would I describe this? Tell me if you recognize it. So this is after like Holdo's being very quiet, like she's being very like she's letting him have his outburst, and then she's just like, "Get this man off my bridge," and then it's like. I'm definitely paraphrasing, but the point is that it's like one, two, two. It's rhythmic, and
Yep.
it is all within these like four notes. It's like it's just like she means business, and we're moving on with this. And it reminds me of like the Resistance themes as well.
Yeah, I really love that moment, but I am like a sucker for any dramatic strings. Like anytime I hear a dramatic string, I'm like, oh, that's my thing. I love this.
Well, that's my
Especially
thing
because
too, so I agree.
well, it's so like it's melodic and pretty, but angry. Like
Angry.
you know it means business in that moment, but it's composed. It knows what's up. Like it's exactly what Holdo is doing. She's not happy.
Mm-hmm.
She is like, this dude is making me real angry, but she is composed the whole time. But you know, she means business and she is not happy about his outburst.
Yeah, I think that's a
And
good
it like
point.
elevates that.
I think that's a good point, and I think the rhythm actually plays into that more. I mean, obviously strings can be really flowy and not really tied down to a rhythm at all, or they could be, in a specific time and specific notes. And a couple episodes ago, when I was talking about the music in Rey's cave scene and Luke's cave scene on Dagobah, and like I was talking about how the music is very like arrhythmic, almost like free time. Like you can't really tap your toes to it because it's just like kind of everywhere and just like roaming. But when things are like in a tight rhythm where you could be like one, yep, one, do, 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 do. Like that shows direction. It shows like intent. And it's like whatever emotion you're conveying within that space, maybe anger, maybe determination, whatever it is, it's controlled. So it's like either controlled chaos or like controlled anger.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like basically what you said about like it really shows Holdo's attitude and also just like what she knows the resistance needs to do to move on with their plan, and she doesn't have any time to fully like lash out into this full 3 minute thing. Like she's just like she knows what she needs to do. It's this like march like intention with the low strings and everything. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's a good point.
Well, and I notice like that happens a lot with the Resistance and the Rebels compared to Jedi. I notice a lot of the
Mm.
Jedi themes are really magical feeling. There might be that little like in Ezra's theme you have this little like I don't know, I feel like I'm going to mess it up when I do it, but it's a little like mystical do 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 like it has these little tiny
So for
rhythms
people
in it.
that don't know Ezra's theme, what is there? Are there characters the the Last Jedi that have similarly magical themes? Like, what do you mean by magical? Do you mean like in rhythm?
in in rhythm and in like I feel like not Leia's theme is closest in what I when I think of it.
Hmm.
Rey's theme, Rey and Kylo kind of have like a like have a similar thing when they're going. There's kind of like a romantic, flowy, which is intentional. It is supposed to be romantic. Yes.
I've
Like it's
never
intended
heard
to
someone
be.
explain Kylo or describe Kylo Ren's theme as romantic.
When Rey is in the moment, they combine it. They do a thing. Ryan Johnson was talking about this. It is supposed to be romantic. It is supposed
Hmm.
to be a little bit like she is drawn to him for a reason. Whether or not that's romance, whether or not that's brotherly, whether or not whatever it is, she is drawn to him in a way that is interesting and enticing and magical. Um, in the Jedi and like the temple scenes, the cave scenes, you get this very like ethereal sound to me. It gets very flowy, it kind of takes up the room and it creates that ambiance of mysticism because the Jedi are supposed to be mystical, they're supposed to be magical, they're supposed to be something that transcends what we understand. Whereas the Resistance and the Rebels, they mean business. They are something we are all too familiar with. We see these kinds of people in our real world, in our real life, and I feel like their themes and their kind of like that composed nature of them really drives it home. Whereas the Jedi, it's very like, ooh, let's look what's going on over here. And like even the Sith kind of combines that the ambiance, but then you get that like harsh strings with them.
Okay, so let me
Sorry.
let me
I got a lot of
let me
put
try
it into
to let me
music
try to
terms.
sum up what I think you're talking, and like what my understanding of what you're talking about is, with my own spin on it. So if I misrepresent what you're saying, just let me know. I think it's not really a Jedi versus rebels or resistance thing in per se. I think it's more like the the movements, the political movements, the military actions, those sort of things are, as opposed to the rest of the Star Wars universe, which is whatever, that's this whole other category with other subcategories. But the thing that is the unique part is like the Imperials and the Rebels and the Resistance and the First Order, like basically the politics, the military, those things. And those are
Agree.
characterized by really specific military marches, like rhythms. And that is what really characterizes those, is like they're all marches and they're all like, they've got the snares, they've got the like really driving and also really consistent, and sort of like if you imagine like literally marching, like you're marching and you're following a really established rhythm, and there's not much room for variation, or like in music speak, like rubato is what that would be called, is like when you can take your time emoting on a melody. And it's like rubato just means like free tempo, like you can stretch some places and speed some places up and kind of like do all kinds of things. So like, yeah, Leia's theme and Yoda's theme and even some of the dark themes, like a lot of other ones just aren't as strict. Basically, like in real life, like no music is as strict as the military music.
Mm-hmm.
And then within that, I think what you're saying about the Jedi having, or like the Force in general having some more mystical, magical types of themes. Yeah, there are a lot of harmonic reasons for that, and a lot of things relating to the number of notes being used and the span, the ranges of lowest notes to highest notes, like
Yeah.
a lot of Jedi melodies and light side of the Force, and just like heroes will have a much bigger range that their melody is within. It's like having a bigger face for your whatever, just a bigger room to move around in with the melody. And a lot of the more dark side themes will be confined to like a really small set of notes. So that might be, yeah. Let me know if
That is a lot of that. I notice that a lot, at least when I'm watching, like, and I tend to be drawn to the light side themes. Like those tend to be the ones I really, really, really like. Because I appreciate that wide range, that kind of the journey you go through. But the second I hear the Imperial March, I know bad business is coming. Like I know what that means. It's always funny to me because the TV shows use it everywhere. So they'll like, if there's like a celebration, they'll for the Empire, they'll make it happy. They'll do like a happy Imperial March. And I'm like, I don't know how I feel about this because this means bad news. This doesn't mean anything good. Whereas like the Jedi, a lot of the
for your
Jedi, and
perspective.
yeah, from my perspective, I don't like what's happening.
Yeah, neither do the like rebels that we see,
No.
the shows whose eyes we see the marches through, the whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Star Wars is
Whereas,
told
like,
mainly from the hero's side. So,
yes,
yeah.
which I'm fine with. But
Yeah, for sure.
I'm very like, I'm all pro Jedi, pro light side. Like I'm all on the hero side of things. I'm wearing a Rey shirt right now.
Nice.
Um, but with the Jedi themes, I just or like the light side themes in general, I find them so pretty and rhythmic and like just kind of relaxing a lot of the time. Like they're really like soothing to listen to and just like I can put them on while I'm working and I feel like I can get a good flow of my work to them.
Did you say more rhythmic?
Not rhythmic, but like flowy.
Yeah.
Flowy is
I think
the
flowy
more
is
what
like
I
how I
mean.
would. I think I would
Yeah.
agree with that. If there's a they activate like different parts of my brain, and also like when
Mhm.
they're used in scenes, they I think they make me feel as a listener and a viewer different, like they prime me to take in the scene differently. So like if I'm
Mhm.
hearing a flowy Jedi light side type of theme, then I'm more apt to like relax and take in what's happening with a sense of like openness and wonder. And if I'm hearing a lot of military marches going from one to the other and a lot of those things, then I'm sort of at the edge of my seat, feeling more closed off and feeling more like, I don't know, just like focused on what is happening and getting through it and like making sure we're going to be okay.
Yeah. That's I feel like that's and something that Star Wars has always done really well. Like when I hear those light side themes, I'm like, okay, I'm good, I'm safe.
Yeah.
And then
Well, we
when you
do
hear the
get a
dark
light side
side,
theme. We get a light side theme actually right after
yeah,
this,
yeah,
but it is very it doesn't go on for very long. So, I mean, of course I'm talking about when Rey's getting to the escape pod, we hear and we know that, she's about to do something and she's being brave, but she's got it and we're with our hero. Um, but it doesn't really last for too long. And this is when she has her conversation with Chewie. Well, if you can call it a conversation, where she's thinking about Finn and wants to give him a message. And then again, when she's taking off, we hear her theme again, and that is
mhm.
just also very short because then she arrives in that awesome shot where she's so cramped in the escape pod, and it opens. We hear this descending harmonic minor line that goes. And then we hear the shh of the thing opening. And then we see Kylo's face.
Oh, I
It's like
love it so
party's
much.
over. No more Rey's theme. Now we're in First Order land.
I love it. I well, that's it's a nice contrast because you have this like very serious, everything is ramping up. Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. Slight moment of reprieve with Rey having like a happy-ish moment with Chewie. It's serious.
I
She
wouldn't say
means
it's
business.
happy. I would say it's more like
Hopeful. I would describe it as like she's hopeful that she can do what she's gonna do, but just in case.
purpose driven.
She's it's very purpose driven. And it's much more hopeful than like everything is kind of going badly on the other side of things. And this is kind of a moment where we feel like we believe in Rey. Rey believes in what she's gonna do.
Yeah.
So I would not happy, but it's not as I'm not stressed out watching that scene in the way that I am watching the other scenes.
Yeah, I think we trust in Rey's ability to follow through on what she sets out to do.
Yeah. And I feel like the music illustrates that.
Yeah,
It's
I think so.
illustrating that she feels this and she's going to do it. And then it's kind of crushed the second Kylo shows up.
Well, she knows that he's going to, yeah,
Yeah.
she knows what she's getting into, but
Yeah.
yeah.
But it's that like, oh, it's for us, we're kind of like, oh, maybe it's not gonna go as well as we hope it is moment.
Yes. Maybe not.
Like like we believed in Rey and we love her, and then Kylo shows up and we're like, okay, well, we do have to
Well,
remember that Kylo is
let's,
still Kylo.
yeah. Yeah. It's not like he's going to welcome her with open arms. Though I think she's probably still totally cool at this point. Because
Mhm.
again, she knows what she's getting into. She knows what she's, I mean, she vaguely knows what she's about to do. She knows that
Yeah.
she's the one who went into the She
Yeah.
chose to fly into the hangar. So, yes, this
It's
is
just like,
getting to
okay,
a climactic point.
it's getting real now. She's like,
Getting
okay, I set out to do this. The nerves have set in because now I am actually there and doing it now.
And I think it's made much more intense just because they've already had so many
Mhm.
Force Skype connections that now they're seeing each other face to face for the first time in a really long time. And it's a little, I don't know, I feel a little awkward about it. I feel like, um, I don't know. How do you feel about it?
It's awkward. It's a
Yeah.
little weird. You don't I mean, I wouldn't know what to do. I feel like for me it's like meeting your friend that you've met, you've talked over the internet, but you've never met in person and now you're like,
But not
"Wait."
only talked, she's like seen him without a cowl on.
Yeah.
They've told each other
Like
their like deepest fears. Like,
this is that internet long distance friend that you've known for a while or romantic partner or whatever that you've known for a while and you're like, "Crap, we're actually doing this now. Like we're actually meeting." And then there's always that like, "What do you say? What do you do? What you had an
you,
intention and now you're
in
not
this case, you
sure."
handcuff her.
Yes. Yeah. Kylo's
Totally
like,
normal,
"Cool."
totally normal thing to do. You get the really big handcuffs out, and you get that shot with like the handcuffs coming down on her.
And Ray's like, "I guess I should have expected this.
Yeah, yeah.
Guess I should have known that this is how I'd be received." Whereas and Kylo is like, am I cool yet?" It's so like because to Kylo, he doesn't really understand what he wants or needs or who he really is as a person. I feel like so much of his journeys through these three movies is figuring out who he is and how to react to things. Whereas Rey is pretty sure of who she is most of the time. And it's like a very much of a contrast. So I feel like in this moment, he's like, he does resonate with her, but he's still so much of like, well, this is who I am, I think. So he's not really sure how to handle this. Whereas I think she is much more like, I know what I expect and want to happen here, and he doesn't really know. He knows what he thinks he wants, I guess, is how I would describe it.
Okay, I disagree. I disagree. I think I think neither of them know what they want, but both of them think that they know what they want. And
I yeah,
I think Rey doesn't. I don't think Rey knows who she is. I think she is like, it's not that either of them, it's not that neither of them haven't thought about it. They both have suspicions. They both have things that they're trying out. Rey basically, she thinks she knows who she is, but she also has, those doubts, and she has, like what we see in the cave, and she is still in many ways searching for answers about who she is. And
I think there's a difference. I think what I mean more is that she knows her morals. She understands what like she understands where she stands on things, even if she doesn't know where she came from or who her parents are,
oh yeah,
which
yeah.
bothers
No,
her.
no, no. I
I-
mean, yeah, yeah, for sure.
But I
But
think as like her personality, she's not insecure in who she is
yeah,
as a person.
I don't
Like
think she's as
that's what I
conflicted.
mean.
I don't think
No.
she's feels as conflicted as Kylo yet, but I feel like she also has a naivety, like she hasn't seen as much as Kylo yet.
Mm-mm.
And she's still, I mean, I
I
think
would
every Jedi kind of has like their moment where at the beginning they're super like, yeah, I'm no problems here. I'm all light. I'm all light side. And even, here we see that even Luke has like, every
well,
Jedi
yeah.
sort of has to have their moments of like kind of growing up, not growing up, but experiencing more than just them, like having a real test of their character, like having a real test of their character and
Yeah.
and I think at this point Kylo Ren thinks he knows what he wants, and I think that he wants Rey to join him.
Yeah. Well,
And
that's what I get out of it. I just for Rey specifically, part of why I like her a lot and resonate. I don't. Part of why I like her so much is that her insecurities and her her moments of self-doubt aren't so much I'm a bad person so much as they are like I don't know if I'm ready to take on the weight of everything. Because I honestly, like, to me, Rey, though she hasn't traveled a bunch, she has lived a much harsher existence than Kylo has ever known, really. She did not have family. She did not like, he chose to not have family. She didn't choose that. She had to grow up on a planet and try to survive as, like, a young child and figure out a very selfish world with very selfish people, and she's the fact that she still believes in the good in others and the fact that she still wants to do the right thing and is pretty sure that she can is really impressive for the world that she lived in, whereas Kylo
Absolutely.
has a very loving mother. He has, I guess kind of I don't really know, we don't really know what Han Solo is like as a dad. He wasn't around much, I guess. But he has, like, a loving mother. He has an uncle who cared about him and wanted to train him, and he's just angry at everyone all the time. I struggle a lot with Kylo because as much as I wanna have sympathy for him, it's very difficult at times where I'm like, "Dude, you're the one who chose to kill your dad." Like, you're the one who kinda chose to do these things, so it's much harder for me to be like, "Yes, this man I think he's very naive." Like, I would
Oh yeah,
describe
they're
Kylo
both yes.
as the
Part
naive one compared to Rey. I think Rey has a different understanding of the world because of where she comes from. She
mm.
might not be super well versed in different species and different people, but she is like she's aware that people are selfish. She's aware that bad people exist, but she's choosing to believe in the good in them anyways because what like why wouldn't you kind of thing. She's just like, well, yeah, people were selfish. People stole from me. People didn't pay me as much as I was owed. I had to like be the best of the best to survive and learn how to scrap ships and learn how to fight on a desert planet with a staff
Rey
and
is a like
not
she's a
die.
very rare personality, I would say. She's definitely exceptional and extraordinary. Kylo, I think the problem that I think the issue, like my thing with Anakin and Kylo is I feel like personality wise, I kind of, not personality wise, but I feel like I relate to a sense of their troubledness in a way, but I feel like they act out in a way that like when Rey's struggles and her like it doesn't result in so much catastrophe about like she like what she's dealing with doesn't spill out into like killing other people. And so that's like the part that I struggle with these other characters that I do empathize with Kylo Ren, and I feel like I can definitely fill in gaps as to like why he may have had a really um why he may has so much conflict in his childhood and adolescence. Like I definitely um am empathetic to that and can fill in a lot in my head canon to, justify that. But that still doesn't justify like all that he does.
Yeah.
And like you can be super troubled and not kill your dad.
Yeah.
So
I,
so
well,
yeah.
and Anakin to me is a little different because Anakin is tricked in a lot of ways into doing what he does and becoming who he becomes. Yes,
I
it's
feel that
there.
Kylo could have been tricked in many ways too though. The machinations, you know,
Uh, well,
because he
I think
was
that's what
already
episode
confiding in
9.
he was already confiding in Snoke when when Luke when he when that night happened. He was already like flirting with the dark side. Like he already had conflict in him, and at least I got the sense that he was already finding some sort of a mentor figure in like Snoke, sort of like how Anakin was to Palpatine. And
Yeah, I think, maybe it's just because, for me, like, Anakin is a former slave, his mom is killed, he's he's seeing the Jedi be very inactive on things. He's seeing so much pain and strife and all the stuff in the world, and his drive is much more, I want it to be better. Whereas Kylo's feels very, I don't know, like it always feels very like I hate my family for some reason, and it's
Yeah,
not quite
I get you.
clear as to why. And to me, it's like, yeah, I'm sure Snoke, like, yes, now we know Palpatine tricked him and put the voices in the heads and did the Vader thing and the like Snoke stuff. Like now we know that. Um, but before that, I was always just kind of like, I love Adam Driver, and Adam Driver is doing a great job with this role, which makes me like Kylo a little bit. But as a motivated villain, to me, I'm like, you want to be powerful. That's who you are, which is totally real and totally believable. And I actually don't mind that angle for a villain. I was actually quite okay with that idea that like he just wants to be recognized for being powerful and he wants to be in charge. And he wants to feel like he has power, which would kind of make sense if you think about the fact that his mom is a general and a princess and like has power and is respected and is in charge. And Luke, his uncle, is a super notable legend figure. Han Solo is the Han Solo. Like his entire family are somebodies. So I can see his drive being, I want to be a somebody, and then him choosing the wrong side to be a somebody. Um, that's not the route they went. That's how I kind of saw him before that. But I struggle with empathizing with him because of that. Like, but I never felt bad. Never felt like I was supposed to super empathize with him. I felt like I was just supposed to understand why
Yeah,
Ray
like you
did.
weren't you weren't torn up about the fact that you couldn't empathize with him.
No, but I
Yeah.
understand why Ray does. And if I
Yeah.
was in her position and the thing that happens in The Last Jedi where they force connect the way they do, I could understand why someone who wants to believe the best in people would try, would make the effort, who would go out of her way to be like, you could join us and be somebody with us. Because they both want to be somebody. They both want to matter to the world.
I think what they
And
both want is to not feel lonely.
yeah, they want to matter. They want to feel
Yeah.
like they matter to people.
Yes.
Because she was abandoned by her family, and he feels abandoned by his family by not supporting his escapades. I don't know what to call them. Like he kills all the Jedi and forms knights. Like he's not a nice man.
Right. See, in my head, we're going a little off topic here, but I think it's,
Yes.
most people that I talk to are like, everyone loves Kylo Ren, so I don't really encounter many people that I talk to who have thought about not how much they don't like Kylo Ren. So I'm just like really interested to hear their perspective. And I mean, I'm glad to hear a different perspective. I guess I guess in my mind, I feel like I can't I can't take what I know about the circumstances of his life and come to a conclusion just based on like the facts of the circumstances that I know of his life. Like really like nice family, blah blah. Because how many times have I heard like, oh, that comes from a really nice family, like, oh, it looks like everything is so supportive. What went wrong? And I just know that there's always something more that we don't know. And that's the benefit of the doubt that I give with Star Wars, which is like there is some pain, and even though it looks like it'd be really awesome to be like General Leia's son, apparently there are things about it that are not awesome. And so that makes me curious about what was it like for him growing up in the shadow of really famous parents who were really, like a family who has accomplished more than he ever could, maybe. I think Kylo's struggle compared Anakin's struggle, the struggle that was like the push when the push came to shove was like he's trying to protect something that he loves.
Mhm.
And Kylo's feels like a struggle that I think is familiar with many like teenagers and beyond, which is like trying to find trying to self-actualize, trying to separate yourself from your family a little bit. And not everyone does this, but I think some people feel like they need to escape sort of a shadow, depending on what their family was like and how they were treated, or maybe what the expectations and the pressures were put on them. And Kylo is unfortunately still in that phase of, look at me, I'm my own person. And
at like 30.
That's well, he got into the phase when he was younger. So
no, I know. My struggle this gets down to the execution of it all, really. Is my struggle with it is that I don't feel like we see enough of what he went through or who he is to really get the whether or not you should empathize with him or not feeling. And that's where I start to struggle, because the character I have in Force Awakens, honestly, the character I have across all 3 trilogies, he's trying to finish what Vader started in the first one, and then he makes active choices to be evil in both Force Awakens and The Last Jedi. And he makes, like, they are active, conscious choices of, I kill my father, and I don't take Rey's hand, and I don't go with her. And those are active choices to stay on the side he's on, which I actually like a lot.
He's trying to convince himself.
Maybe. Like, I would have been fine if he was just like, no, this is who I want to be.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think that my issue comes from, he would know Vader was not evil in the end, and he would know Vader's life and story and circumstances. So the first movie, I'm like, what are you idolizing?
That is a really funny oversight, where I'm like, does he know that Anakin came back? Does he know that? Did he forget
Luke
that
tell
part?
him? Like, somebody told him this story, I'm sure. So I can't quite empathize with him in the way that I think Rise of Skywalker eventually wants me to, because I don't see his struggle, his pain. Whereas, like, with Vader, I have so much backstory, and that the way they do it and the way that everything goes, I'm like, okay, I can see this man's pain. There's a reason he's not gonna live at the end, but, like, I see that, and then I grew up with the prequels, so it's like, for me, I have this very complete story for him. Yeah. So even if I don't agree with him and he's like a horrible person, and he's a bad guy. He's a bad person. They flesh it out enough for me to understand his motivations.
Yeah, I'm a prequel kid, and Anakin is like I love Anakin.
Yeah, especially after Clone Wars.
Yeah.
Like, Clone Wars really, really drives home how good Anakin is. I'm an Obi-Wan girl, like I always have been. But
I like Anakin more without. I liked Anakin a lot even before Clone Wars. Like, already my favorite, or already.
I liked him.
Yeah, his struggle. Yeah, he's the one that set off the, like, problematic Jedi bells in my head. He's like that.
He's a great character.
This is what happens sometimes. This is what happens when you have a culture that normalizes stuffing down feelings and just having a savior mentality. Wow.
Yeah.
So much.
So
obviously, we both have a lot of thoughts.
Sorry.
It's all right. Well, we're at the end of the 5 minutes, basically. I mean, we do jump to when Rey, Finn, Rose, and DJ are back. And DJ, starts to break in. He cloaks their shit, basically. And so they're about to start on that. But no notable music sticks out to me in that sense. I always like to recap what all of the themes that we got in the 5 minutes were. And so just to recap, those themes were, and if you're following Frank Lehman's thing, I'll link to it. He offers it for free on his website or on academia.edu. You can look at what his take on the themes is. It's mostly like music and stuff, but even if you can't read music, there's some interesting text, and there's like some charts at the end that tabulate how many times like the themes show up in each of the movies. So I think it's interesting for anyone to look up. So shout out to Frank Lehman. So the themes are tension, Resistance in trouble. The other tension, which he calls the generic tension. So both of the tension themes and Rey's theme. So yeah, quite a different crop than we got in the last set of minutes. But the Resistance is clearly in trouble.
I know. God, it made me want to watch the movie. I just want to go watch it now.
And there are so many good bleeps and bloops. Oh my gosh. And I think the final thing that I'll say is at the end, DJ says, what does he say? Like bleepity. He says like bleepity bloop bloop or something. Like he says the bleeps and bloops out loud. And that's it's like a diegetic bloop moment.
The bloops are great. I genuinely love this movie so much, and this scene, like, this is such a, like, what seems like an incidental moment in the movie, but it's so important. You can't lose any of this. Like, it all matters to where this is going, and I just really like it. It makes me happy.
Me too. And I agree what you were saying earlier about Canto Bite. I already sung my praises on that in earlier episodes, but I think it's so instrumental to the movie, and even if it doesn't move the main plot along, it moves Star Wars forward.
It moves the story along. It's not the plot, but it moves the story.
Yeah, and I see Star Wars as one big history, as one big story to learn about. So these little details are very important to me too. Well, anything else to say, Blythe? Thanks for sharing all your insight.
Sorry.
Give me favorite.
It's been a while.
You do what do you do on films?
I primarily am a producer, and I'm primarily work in like digital space. So I do a lot of like new media and like web series and like smaller stuff. One day I will make a big time movie and not just shorts. One day.
Shorts are cool though.
Yeah. So I do mostly producing and directing. I've written some like short form stuff. I kind of do a bit of everything. I do what is needed of me on the set.
Yeah.
And because I work with such small teams, we all kind of have to do a lot of things at one time. It's like, all right, now I'm learning how to be a camera person for the day. Let's do it.
All you have to do next is learn film scoring.
The closest I've got is I can play piano, but I am not I will have to leave that to people who are much better. Like, I can figure out how it goes in a scene and how it should play, but in terms of actually composing,
that's half the battle.
Music,
you can be a music supervisor. Where can people find, like, can we see some of your work online?
So you can find, I have a website, blythekala.com. It mostly has my new media stuff. So mostly when I worked for several YouTube companies and stuff, most of that's on there. The short films I worked on with my friend who directed aren't out yet, and I don't know when they will be because they filmed pre-pandemic.
Oh.
So we don't know. They're being worked on. They'll be finished eventually. And I currently have a web series that's also in work, but we haven't finished filming it, so I don't know when we'll be releasing that either. So I have a lot of projects I've done that you can't see yet.
Love it.
But if you follow me on Twitter or Instagram under Blythe Kala 93, I tend to be very sherry and open about what I do and who I am. So if you just want to have a chat, or if you want to like see stuff or know when I'm doing things, those are the places to check out.
Awesome. And I will say that I think we met over Twitter, and first it was over my word of the day, which was Blythe. But also we bonded over some tweets about the Force. So yes, you can follow her for Star Wars, lots of Star Wars thoughts as well.
So many Star Wars. I have a YouTube channel where I rant about Star Wars, and I talk about the Force, I talk about the Jedi, I talk about Darth Revan. So if you want to see those,
if you learned about Darth Revan when it blew up on Twitter, then which is when I learned about Darth Revan, so no shame. Anyway.
Well, I'm glad Twitter's terrible meme of the day did a really wonderful thing for some people, because Revan's amazing. I love Revan.
So I hear. And now I'm a true fan, because I know. Wow, okay. That was a fascinating discussion. Thank you so much. Listeners, if you have any favorite bleeps and bloops, if you have any favorite sounds of things charging up in Star Wars, actually, genuinely, if you can think of any other time something was charging in Star Wars, please let me know, because now I'm fascinated with that sound. So let me know if something resonated with you. You can leave a comment if you're watching on YouTube. You can ask me on Discord if you're a patron, or you can send me an email at podcast@starwarsmusicminute.com. I'm also on Twitter at Star Wars Museman and at Chrysanthi Tan. And I am also streaming music commentary on Bad Batch on Saturdays, if you are into that. There's lots to talk about. Lots of ways you can contact me, and I love to talk about Star Wars, so please do that. And as always, thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing the show. Thanks for the Apple Podcast reviews and ratings that I've gotten. I really appreciate that. And I will see you next week on Star Wars Music Minute.